You are listening to an extended audio preview of an introduction to Chaos Magick, written by Adam Lusum and published by LLH Media. The complete book is available from LLH Media and selected online retailers. Chapter 1. What is Chaos Magick? Chaos Magick is a term that both intrigues and confounds. To the uninitiated, it may conjure images of wild rituals, arcane symbols, or even reckless abandon. Yet at its core, Chaos Magick is a system of practical magic, one that strips away the dogma, tradition, and rigid structure that have often characterized esoteric practice. It is not about disorder for its own sake, nor is it a rejection of all rules. Rather, it is an approach that places personal experience, adaptability, and pragmatic results above all else. To understand what Chaos Magick truly is, we must first explore the landscape from which it emerged, the ideas that underpin it, and the ways it diverges from the magical traditions that came before. The roots of Chaos Magick can be traced back to the late 20th century, a time of profound cultural, social, and philosophical transformation. The 1970s and 1980s in particular saw a resurgence of interest in occultism in the Western world. The countercultural movements of the 1960s had already laid the groundwork, breaking down many societal taboos and exposing millions to new ways of thinking. In the world of magic, this period was characterized by a growing dissatisfaction with what many saw as the ossified rituals and dogmas of traditional magical orders. Groups such as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Ordo Templi Orientis, and the various branches of Wicca all had their own elaborate systems, complete with prescribed rituals, symbols, and hierarchies. For some, these systems provided a sense of continuity and belonging. For others, however, they became stifling. The question arose, was all this paraphernalia truly necessary for effective magic, or had the means become confused with the ends? Out of this fertile soil of questioning and experimentation, Chaos Magick was born. The name Chaos Magick itself is evocative, and in some ways misleading. The word chaos here does not refer to mere disorder, but rather to the primordial creative potential that underlies all existence. In this sense, chaos is the raw material from which all forms emerge. The concept has deep philosophical and mythological roots, echoing the ancient Greek notion of chaos as the void or abyss from which the cosmos was formed. In Chaos Magick, chaos represents the infinite possibilities available to the magician, unbound by tradition or dogma. One of the central figures in the development of Chaos Magick is Peter J. Carroll, whose books Liber No and Psychonaut became foundational texts for the movement. Ray Sherwin also played a significant role, particularly in the formation of the Illuminates of Thanateros, one of the few organized groups to emerge from the chaos current. Carroll and Sherwin, along with other early practitioners, sought to distill magic down to its essentials. They asked, what actually works, what is necessary, and what is mere window dressing? In their view, much of what passed for tradition was little more than empty ritual, performed out of habit rather than necessity. Chaos magicians, or chaots as they are sometimes called, approach magic with a radical pragmatism. They are willing to borrow, adapt, or even invent techniques as needed, drawing inspiration from a wide variety of sources: Western ceremonial magic, Eastern mysticism, shamanism, psychology, science fiction, and even pop culture. In the words of Carroll, nothing is true, everything is permitted. Everything is permitted. This phrase, adapted from the writings of Hassani Sabah, the legendary leader of the medieval order of assassins, encapsulates the spirit of Chaos Magick. It is not a license for nihilism, but a recognition that belief itself is a tool, a technology that can be wielded consciously and deliberately. This idea of belief as a tool is perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of Chaos Magick. In most traditional systems, belief in the efficacy of rituals, symbols, or deities is considered essential. The practitioner is expected to accept certain truths, whether they be the existence of spirits, the power of words, or the importance of lineage. In Chaos Magick, by contrast, belief is seen as a means to an end, not an end in itself. The magician adopts beliefs as needed, discards them when they are no longer useful, and is always aware that these beliefs are ultimately constructs, maps rather than territories. The notion that belief shapes reality is not unique to Chaos Magick. It can be found in various forms throughout the history of magic, religion, and even psychology. What sets Chaos Magick apart is its explicit emphasis on the flexibility and interchangeability of belief. The Chaot is encouraged to treat beliefs like tools in a toolbox, selecting the right one for the task at hand. If invoking a particular deity or performing a certain ritual produces the desired result, then it is useful. If not, it is discarded or modified. There is no need to be bound by consistency or tradition. This pragmatic approach allows for a remarkable degree of creativity and experimentation. It is important to note, however, that this flexibility does not mean that anything goes, or that all methods are equally effective. Chaos magicians are keenly interested in results. They keep careful records of their experiments, noting what works and what does not. The emphasis is always on personal experience and efficacy, rather than on adherence to doctrine. In this sense, Chaos Magick shares certain affinities with the scientific method, though it operates in a domain that is not always amenable to quantitative measurement. At the heart of Chaos Magick lies the concept of the magical paradigm. A paradigm in this context is a set of beliefs, symbols, and practices that shape the magician's experience of reality. Traditional magical systems tend to operate within fixed paradigms, Kabbalah, for example, or the tarot, or the pantheon of a particular religion. Chaos magicians, by contrast, are paradigm shifters. They move fluidly from one paradigm to another, adopting whatever system is most effective for their current purpose. One day a Chaot might perform a ritual using the imagery of ancient Egypt. The next, they might invoke characters from a favorite novel or film. The boundaries between real and fictional, sacred and profane, are deliberately blurred. This ability to shift paradigms at will is both liberating and challenging. It requires a certain psychological flexibility, as well as a willingness to question one's own assumptions and beliefs. For some, this can be unsettling. The comfort of tradition is replaced by the responsibility of self-direction. There is no external authority to provide validation or reassurance. The magician must rely on their own judgment and experience. Yet, for those who are willing to embrace this challenge, Chaos Magick offers a path of unparalleled creative freedom. Another key principle of Chaos Magick is the emphasis on altered states of consciousness. In order to work magic effectively, it is generally considered necessary to enter a state in which the conscious mind is bypassed and the subconscious is engaged. Traditional systems achieve this through elaborate rituals, meditation, fasting, or the use of psychoactive substances. Chaos magicians are encouraged to experiment with a wide variety of techniques, whatever works best for them. The goal is to achieve what Carroll calls gnosis, a state of heightened awareness and focus in which magical intent can be most effectively directed. There are many ways to achieve gnosis. Some practitioners use meditation or breath control. Others employ drumming, dancing, chanting, or even sexual activity. Some use sensory deprivation or overload. The methods are as varied as the practitioners themselves. What matters is not the technique, but the result. A temporary suspension of the critical, analytical mind and the activation of the deeper, more intuitive faculties. Sigil magic is one of the most popular techniques within Chaos Magick, and it illustrates many of the core principles of the system. The basic idea is simple. The magician formulates a desire, reduces it to a symbolic form, the sigil, and then charges it with magical energy during a state of gnosis. The conscious mind, which might otherwise interfere with the process through doubt or skepticism, is thus bypassed, allowing the sigil to take root in the subconscious and influence reality. The beauty of sigil magic lies in its simplicity and adaptability. Anyone can do it, and it requires no special tools or training. The use of symbolism in Chaos Magick is similarly eclectic. Practitioners are free to create their own symbols, adapt those from other systems, or even repurpose elements of popular culture. The traditional boundaries between high and low magic, or between serious and frivolous symbolism, are largely irrelevant. What matters is that the symbol has meaning and power for the individual practitioner. This willingness to draw from all available sources is sometimes referred to as magical bricolage, a process of creative assembly and adaptation. It should be clear by now that Chaos Magick is not a system in the traditional sense. It has no central authority, no sacred texts, and no initiatory hierarchy. It is more accurately described as an anti-system, a meta-system, or even a philosophy of magic. Its practitioners are united not by a shared set of beliefs, but by a shared approach, skepticism toward dogma, willingness to experiment, and a focus on results. This has led some critics to dismiss chaos magic as shallow or unserious, a kind of magical postmodernism that lacks the depth and rigor of older traditions. Yet for its adherents, this very lack of fixed structure is a strength rather than a weakness. By freeing magic from the constraints of tradition, chaos magicians are able to explore new possibilities and adapt to changing circumstances. In a world that is increasingly complex and fluid, the ability to shift paradigms and experiment creatively is a valuable asset. The history of chaos magic is still being written. From its beginnings in the underground occult scene of 1970s England, it has spread around the world, influencing everything from art and literature to psychology and contemporary spirituality. The internet, in particular, has played a major role in the dissemination of chaos ideas, allowing practitioners to share techniques, experiences, and insights across geographical and cultural boundaries. Online forums, blogs, and social media have become the new temples and libraries of the chaos current. Along the way, chaos magic has absorbed influences from a dizzying array of sources. The writings of Austin Osman Spare, an early 20th century artist and occultist, have been particularly influential. Spare's emphasis on the subconscious, his use of sigils, and his iconoclastic attitude toward tradition all anticipated many of the ideas that would later become central to chaos magic. Other influences include the work of Aleister Crowley, the theories of Carl Jung, the philosophy of existentialism, and even the discoveries of quantum physics. The result is a system that is both deeply eclectic and profoundly personal. One of the most distinctive features of chaos magic is its relationship to fiction and imagination. Traditional magical systems often draw sharp lines between the real and the imaginary, insisting on the objective existence of spirits, deities, or magical forces. Chaos magicians, by contrast, are often agnostic about such questions. They recognize that the boundaries between imagination and reality are porous, and that what matters is not whether something is real in an objective sense, but whether it produces tangible results in the magician's experience. This attitude is reflected in the widespread use of pop culture references in chaos magic. It is not uncommon for practitioners to invoke characters from comic books, movies, or video games, treating them as archetypal forces or symbolic representations of particular qualities. The logic is simple. If belief is a tool, and if symbols derive their power from the meaning we invest in them, then there is no reason why Batman or Wonder Woman cannot be as effective as Hermes or Isis. This willingness to play with symbolism, to blur the lines between the sacred and the profane, is one of the hallmarks of chaos magic. Yet for all its playfulness and irreverence, chaos magic is not without its dangers. The freedom to experiment and invent comes with a corresponding responsibility. Without the guidance of tradition or the support of a community, it is easy for the practitioner to become lost, to fall into self-delusion, or to lose sight of their goals. For this reason, many chaos magicians emphasize the importance of self-discipline, critical thinking, and ongoing self-examination. The chaos magician is both artist and scientist, poet and engineer, explorer and skeptic. Another potential pitfall is the temptation to mistake novelty for effectiveness. Because chaos magicians are encouraged to experiment with new techniques and paradigms, there is always a risk of chasing after the latest fad or becoming attached to novelty for its own sake. The antidote to this is a rigorous focus on results, combined with honest self-assessment. What matters is not how exotic or original a technique may be, but whether it actually works to produce the desired change. It is also important to recognize that chaos magic is not for everyone. Some people thrive on structure, tradition, and a sense of continuity with the past. The fluidity and individualism of chaos magic may be unsettling or unsatisfying. Others, however, find in chaos an exhilarating sense of freedom and possibility. As with all paths, the key is to find what resonates with one's own temperament, needs, and aspirations. In summary, chaos magic is best understood as a dynamic, experimental approach to magic that prioritizes personal experience, adaptability, and pragmatic results. It emerged as a reaction against the rigidity and dogmatism of traditional magical systems, drawing inspiration from a wide range of sources and emphasizing the use of belief as a conscious tool. Its practitioners are paradigm shifters, willing to adopt, adapt, or invent symbols, rituals, and techniques as needed. The boundaries between real and imaginary, sacred and profane, are deliberately blurred, and the emphasis is always on what works. The history of chaos magic is one of ongoing evolution and adaptation. From its beginnings in the alternative occult scene of late 20th century England, it has grown into a global phenomenon, influencing art, literature, psychology, and contemporary spirituality. Its central principles, flexibility, pragmatism, and creative experimentation, make it uniquely suited to the challenges and opportunities of the modern world. For those who are drawn to explore its possibilities, Chaos Magick offers both a challenge and an invitation. It asks the practitioner to take responsibility for their own experience, to question assumptions, and to experiment boldly. It offers no guarantees, no ready-made answers, and no easy path. Yet for those willing to embrace its paradoxes and uncertainties, it opens the door to a world of boundless creativity and transformative potential. As we move forward in this book, we will explore the practical techniques, philosophical underpinnings, and personal experiences that make up the world of chaos magic. We will examine the tools and methods favored by chaos practitioners, from sigils and servitors to paradigm shifting and altered states of consciousness. We will consider the ethical and psychological dimensions of magic, and we will look at the ways in which chaos ideas continue to evolve in response to the changing world. Above all, we will seek to illuminate the central insight of chaos magic, that magic is, at its heart, a creative act, one that is limited only by the imagination and will of the practitioner. Chapter 2. A Brief History of Magic. Magic is as old as humanity itself. From the earliest flickers of consciousness, people have reached beyond the apparent boundaries of the physical world, seeking to influence their fate, commune with unseen forces, and unravel the mysteries of existence. The story of magic is not merely a chronicle of spells and rituals, but a record of humanity's deepest yearnings, an evolving understanding of itself and the cosmos. To understand chaos magic, one must first appreciate the long and winding road that led to its emergence. The roots of magic stretch back into prehistory, long before the advent of written language. Archaeological evidence from Paleolithic sites reveals that our distant ancestors engaged in elaborate rituals involving animal bones, painted caves, and sacred objects. These early peoples lived in a world alive with spirits and powers. The shaman, a figure found in cultures across the globe, acted as the mediator between the tribe and the invisible realms. Through trance, dance, and the use of psychoactive plants, shamans sought to heal, divine, and protect their communities. Their magic was practical and immediate, aimed at ensuring survival and well-being. As societies grew more complex, so did their magical practices. The agricultural revolution, which began around 10,000 BCE, brought about settled communities and new relationships with the land. Fertility rites, seasonal festivals, and ancestor veneration became central features of religious life. The cycles of planting and harvest were imbued with ritual significance, and magicians, priests, and priestesses emerged as custodians of sacred knowledge. In ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, magic was intertwined with religion and the nascent sciences. Clay tablets from Sumer and Babylon record incantations, exorcisms, and astrological calculations. The priests of these city-states performed elaborate ceremonies to appease the gods and ward off malevolent spirits. Their magic was systematic, blending observation of natural phenomena with the invocation of divine powers. Egypt, too, developed a rich magical tradition that endured for millennia. The Egyptians believed the world was sustained by the force of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order. Magicians, known as Heka practitioners, wielded the power of Heka, a divine energy that animated the universe. Spells for protection, healing, and the afterlife were inscribed on papyri, amulets, and tomb walls. Egyptian magic was deeply symbolic, relying on hieroglyphs, ritual objects, and precise gestures. It was closely associated with religion, but also permeated daily life. Ordinary people sought the aid of magicians to solve problems, cure ailments, and safeguard their homes. In the ancient world, magic flourished alongside philosophy and science. In Greece, magic was both revered and feared. The Greeks distinguished between theurgy, which aimed at union with the divine, and goetia, which dealt with spirits and practical sorcery. Pythagoras, Plato, and other philosophers speculated about the hidden order of the cosmos, while itinerant magicians and oracles offered their services to those in need. The Hellenistic period following the conquest of Alexander the Great was a time of intense cross-cultural exchange. Egyptian, Persian, Babylonian, and Greek ideas blended in the great cities of the Mediterranean. The result was a syncretic magical tradition that drew on astrology, alchemy, and theurgy. The Hermetic texts, attributed to the mythical Hermes Trismegistus, became foundational works for later magicians. They taught that the universe was a living whole, that humanity possessed a divine spark, and that through knowledge and ritual, one could ascend to higher states of being. Rome inherited and expanded the magical traditions of its neighbors. While official religion focused on the worship of state gods, private citizens consulted magicians, astrologers, and diviners. Magical papyri from Roman Egypt reveal a rich tapestry of spells, invocations, and rituals, blending Greek, Egyptian, and Jewish elements. The early Christian church condemned magic as heresy, associating it with paganism and demonic forces. Yet magical beliefs persisted, often merging with folk Christianity. The struggle between orthodox religion and heterodox magic would shape the Western magical tradition for centuries to come. With the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of Christianity, the public practice of magic was driven underground. Medieval Europe was a patchwork of beliefs, where remnants of paganism mingled with Christian doctrine. Village wise women, cunning folk, and herbalists continued to practice folk magic, offering charms, cures, and divination to their communities. At the same time, learned magicians in monasteries and universities studied the grimoires, manuscripts of magical knowledge. These texts, such as the Clavicula Salomonis, Key of Solomon, and the Picatrix, drew on Jewish, Arabic, and classical sources. They detailed the summoning of spirits, the creation of talismans, and the use of planetary correspondences. The medieval magician was as much a scholar as a sorcerer, seeking to unlock the secrets of nature and the divine. The Renaissance marked a turning point in the history of magic. The rediscovery of ancient texts, the rise of humanism, and the flourishing of the arts and sciences created a fertile ground for magical innovation. Figures like Marsilio Ficino, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, and Cornelius Agrippa sought to reconcile magic with philosophy and theology. Ficino translated the Hermetic texts and taught that the soul could ascend to the divine through music, astrology, and ritual. Pico championed the dignity of humanity and the transformative power of magic. Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy synthesized centuries of magical lore, presenting a comprehensive system of correspondences linking the celestial, terrestrial, and spiritual worlds. Alchemy, too, reached new heights during the Renaissance. Alchemists pursued the transmutation of base metals into gold, the creation of the philosopher's stone, and the quest for spiritual perfection. Their work was both practical and symbolic, blending laboratory experiments with mystical meditation. Paracelsus, a Swiss physician and alchemist, revolutionized medicine by applying alchemical principles to healing. He believed that disease had both physical and spiritual causes, and that the doctor must act as a magician to restore balance. The Protestant Reformation and the rise of scientific rationalism in the 17th century posed new challenges to magic. The authority of the Church was questioned, and the mechanistic worldview of thinkers like Descartes and Newton left little room for spirits and occult forces. Yet magic adapted to the changing climate. The Rosicrucian manifestos, published in the early 1600s, claimed the existence of a secret brotherhood dedicated to spiritual enlightenment and the reformation of society. Freemasonry, emerging in the same period, drew on alchemical and hermetic symbolism, offering initiates a system of moral and spiritual development. The 18th and 19th centuries witnessed a revival of interest in magic, fueled by Romanticism, Orientalism, and the rise of secret societies. The Enlightenment had championed reason and skepticism, but it also sparked a fascination with the mysterious and the exotic. The occult became fashionable among artists, writers, and intellectuals. In France, the enigmatic figure of Eliphas Levi synthesized Kabbalah, tarot, and ceremonial magic into a coherent system. Levi's works such as Transcendental Magic inspired a new generation of magicians. In England, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was founded in 1888, bringing together elements of Kabbalah, alchemy, astrology, and ritual magic. the Golden Dawn developed a complex system of initiations, rituals, and symbolism, drawing on the Western esoteric tradition. Its members included poets, scholars, and mystics, most notably Aleister Crowley and W.B. Yeats. The Golden Dawn's influence on modern magic cannot be overstated. It provided a structured curriculum, a rich symbolic framework, and a sense of community for aspiring magicians. Aleister Crowley, perhaps the most famous magician of the 20th century, broke away from the Golden Dawn to found his own magical order, the AAAA, and later the Ordo Templi Orientis, OTO. Crowley's system, known as Thelema, emphasized the primacy of individual will, encapsulated in the phrase, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." He drew on Eastern and Western traditions, incorporating yoga, meditation, and sexual magic into his practice. Crowley's writings such as Magic in Theory and Practice redefined magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. His flamboyant persona and controversial life made him a polarizing figure, but his influence on modern magicians is profound. The early 20th century also saw the emergence of other magical currents. Dion Fortune, a former member of the Golden Dawn, founded the Society of the Inner Light and wrote extensively on psychic development, ritual, and the mystical aspects of Christianity. Gerald Gardner, inspired by Crowley and Margaret Murray's theories of witchcraft, founded the modern Wiccan movement in the 1950s. Wicca blended ceremonial magic with folk traditions, emphasizing reverence for nature, the cycles of the moon, and the worship of the goddess and god. Gardner's efforts helped to bring witchcraft out of the shadows and into the mainstream. Meanwhile, in the wider world, indigenous magical traditions persisted in Africa, the Americas, and Asia. These systems, often labeled as shamanism, voodoo, or animism by outsiders, remained vital to the spiritual life of countless communities. Colonialism, missionary activity, and modernization posed challenges to these traditions, but they adapted and survived, sometimes blending with Christianity or Islam. The countercultural movements of the 1960s and 1970s brought a new wave of interest in magic. The psychedelic revolution, the rise of feminism, and the quest for alternative spirituality led many to explore the occult. Books like The Teachings of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda and The Psychedelic Experience by Timothy Leary introduced Western audiences to shamanic and mystical practices. The New Age movement, with its emphasis on personal growth, healing, and holistic spirituality, drew on a wide range of magical and esoteric sources. It was against this backdrop of experimentation and syncretism that Chaos Magick emerged. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, a group of British occultists began to question the assumptions and dogmas of traditional magic. Influenced by the writings of Austin Osman Spare, a reclusive artist and magician, they sought a more flexible, pragmatic approach to magical practice. Spare had emphasized the importance of personal belief, the use of sigils, and the power of the subconscious mind. He rejected the elaborate rituals and hierarchies of ceremonial magic, advocating instead for direct, individual experience. The first significant articulation of Chaos Magick appeared in Liber Null and Psychonaut, published in 1978 by Peter J. Carroll. Carroll and his contemporaries, including Ray Sherwin, Phil Hine, and Robert Anton Wilson, drew on Spare's insights, as well as ideas from psychology, cybernetics, and science fiction. Chaos magicians argued that belief itself is a tool, and that the effectiveness of magic depends not on the objective truth of a system, but on the magician's ability to manipulate belief and intent. They rejected the notion of absolute truths, embracing instead the playful, experimental spirit of the postmodern age. Chaos Magick is characterized by its eclecticism, pragmatism, and irreverence. Practitioners borrow freely from different traditions: Hermeticism, shamanism, tantra, pop culture, adapting techniques to their own needs and preferences. Rituals are stripped down to their essentials, often improvised or personalized. The emphasis is on results, not orthodoxy. Chaos magicians use sigils, meditation, visualization, and altered states of consciousness to achieve their aims. They may invoke gods, spirits, or fictional characters, treating all as masks for deeper psychological or metaphysical forces. The emergence of Chaos Magick marked a radical departure from previous magical systems. Earlier traditions had been rooted in the authority of ancient texts, secret lineages, and fixed correspondences. Chaos Magick, by contrast, treated all systems as provisional, useful fictions, rather than eternal truths. This approach resonated with the zeitgeist of the late 20th century, a time of rapid change, skepticism, and information overload. Chaos magicians embraced uncertainty, paradox, and the creative potential of the imagination. The influence of chaos magic spread rapidly through zines, small press publications, and later the internet. Its do-it-yourself ethos appealed to a new generation of seekers, disillusioned with dogma and hierarchy. Chaos magicians engaged in magical activism, artistic experimentation, and psychological exploration. They blurred the boundaries between magic, art, and science, drawing on chaos theory, quantum physics, and cybernetics to inform their practice. Despite its iconoclastic reputation, chaos magic is not without roots. It stands on the shoulders of centuries of magical experimentation, drawing on the insights of shamans, alchemists, mystics, and visionaries. It shares with its predecessors a fascination with the hidden potentials of the mind, the transformative power of ritual, and the quest for meaning in an uncertain world. But it also reflects the spirit of its own time, skeptical, playful, and endlessly adaptable. In tracing the history of magic, one sees a pattern of continuity and change. Each era has reinterpreted the magical arts in light of its own needs, values, and understanding of the world. From the shaman's ecstatic journey to the Golden Dawn's elaborate ceremonies, from the alchemist's laboratory to the chaos magician's sigil, the essence of magic has remained the same: the attempt to shape reality through intention, imagination, and will. The story of magic is not merely the story of esoteric doctrines and secret rituals. It is the story of human creativity, resilience, and the enduring quest for meaning. It is the story of individuals and communities who have refused to accept the limits of ordinary reality, who have dared to dream, to experiment, to transform themselves and their world. Chaos magic, in its radical openness and experimental spirit, is the latest chapter in this ever-evolving saga. As we move forward in this book, we will explore the principles, techniques, and philosophy of chaos magic in greater detail. But it is important to remember that chaos magic did not arise in a vacuum. It is the heir to a rich and diverse tradition, shaped by the struggles, insights, and innovations of countless magicians across the ages. To practice chaos magic is to participate in this ongoing adventure, to add one's own voice to the chorus of seekers who have walked the magical path. In summary, the history of magic is a tapestry woven from many threads. The ecstatic rites of the shaman, the sacred ceremonies of the temple, the secret experiments of the alchemist, the visionary art of the mystic, and the playful improvisations of the chaos magician. Each has contributed to our understanding of the magical arts. Each has offered tools and insights for those who seek to explore the mysteries of existence. Chaos magic, with its emphasis on flexibility, creativity, and personal empowerment, represents both a continuation and a transformation of this ancient tradition. It invites us to question, to experiment, and to create our own path, guided not by dogma, but by curiosity, courage, and the will to change. Chapter 3: Foundational Philosophies. Chapter 3: Foundational Philosophies. Chaos magic is often described as the punk rock of the occult world, irreverent, experimental, and deeply skeptical of authority and tradition. Its defining feature is not a particular set of rituals, symbols, or deities, but rather a philosophical stance toward belief, reality, and the self. To understand chaos magic, it is essential to grasp its foundational philosophies. These are not static dogmas, but living, breathing approaches to consciousness and the world, rooted in the notion that belief itself is the most powerful magical tool available. In this chapter, we will examine the philosophical pillars that support chaos magic. We will explore the radical idea of belief as a tool, the practice of paradigm shifting, the relationship between skepticism and faith, and the implications of these ideas for personal power and transformation. By the end, you will see how chaos magicians move beyond inherited systems, forging their own paths with a unique blend of pragmatism, playfulness, and audacity. The rejection of dogma. For centuries, magical traditions have been transmitted through lineages, grimoires, and secret societies, each with its own rules and cosmologies. The chaos magician, however, views these inherited systems not as ultimate truths, but as useful stories, maps rather than territories. This approach is rooted in a deep skepticism toward dogma in all its forms. The chaos magician is not interested in what is true in an absolute sense, but rather in what works. This pragmatic attitude can be traced to the influence of postmodern philosophy, which questions the existence of universal truths and emphasizes the role of language, society, and culture in shaping our perceptions. Chaos magicians take this further, applying it to magical practice itself. They recognize that every magical system, from the elaborate rituals of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn to the folk charms of rural cunning folk, is a human construct, a set of symbols and actions that gain power through belief and repetition. This does not mean that all systems are equally effective for all people, or that tradition has no value. Rather, it means that the chaos magician is free to experiment, adapt, and even invent new systems, guided by results rather than reverence for tradition. There is a certain iconoclasm in this approach, a willingness to break with the past in pursuit of personal empowerment. But there is also humility, the recognition that no map is ever the territory, and that all beliefs, even those of the chaos magician, are provisional. Belief as a tool. At the heart of chaos magic lies the concept of belief as a tool. This idea, popularized by Peter J. Carroll and other early proponents, is both simple and profound. Beliefs are not fixed truths, but instruments that can be adopted, discarded, or modified according to the needs of the magician. In this view, belief is not something that happens to us, but something we do. This is a radical departure from the way most people relate to belief. In ordinary life, beliefs are often unconscious, inherited from family, culture, or religion. They shape our perceptions and actions without our awareness. Chaos magicians, by contrast, strive to become conscious of their beliefs, treating them as tools in a magician's toolbox. If a particular belief empowers their magic or enhances their life, they may choose to adopt it, even if they know on some level that it is just a story. If a belief becomes limiting or counterproductive, they can discard it in favor of something more useful. This approach is sometimes called meta-belief, the belief that one can choose one's beliefs. It is both liberating and challenging. It frees the magician from the tyranny of inherited dogmas and allows for creative experimentation. On the other hand, it demands a high degree of self-awareness and psychological flexibility. It is not always easy to consciously adopt a belief, especially when it conflicts with deeply ingrained habits of thought. Nor is it always comfortable to discard a belief that has provided meaning or security. Nevertheless, the chaos magician persists, cultivating the ability to hold beliefs lightly, to step in and out of different worldviews as needed. This is not mere play acting or cynicism. Rather, it is a form of magical craftsmanship, an art of shaping reality from the inside out. The magician becomes a conscious participant in the creation of meaning, wielding belief as a sculptor wields clay. Paradigm shifting, closely related to the idea of belief as a tool, is the practice of paradigm shifting. A paradigm, in this context, is a coherent system of beliefs, symbols, and practices that defines a particular magical worldview. Examples include the Kabbalistic tree of life, the pantheon of Norse gods, or the scientific worldview of materialism. Paradigm shifting is the deliberate act of moving from one such system to another, adopting its assumptions and methods for the purpose of magical work. This practice is both a method and a philosophical stance. You have been listening to an extended preview of an introduction to Chaos Magick. To continue reading, visit the LLH Media Store or the book's Amazon listing.